The politics of the lockdown laid bare, new projections for the COVID-19 death toll, a new coronavirus mutation, beware of COVID toes, Fauci will not take it to the House, and VDH on experience versus credentials. That and more coming up. Welcome, everybody, to the Buck Sexton Show. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Cinco de Mayo, which I'm saying properly for the first time, perhaps ever, as it has been explained to me many times that my tendency to say Sanko is from learning French and not Spanish in school. It is, in fact, Cinco de Mayo, and producer Mark and I are not going to be able to celebrate with margaritas today, but hopefully at a point in the not too distant future. As I had promised a couple of months ago now, we will be having margaritas on the street in NYC in June, I hope. But that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, the speed of the opening. I mean, we've got a lot to focus on, but I also have some questions for which I'm going to start demanding answers. And here's the first one that really comes to mind here, or maybe it's an observation, and I'm wondering when someone's going to explain to me how I'm wrong or why I'm right. The correlation between being anti-Trump and wanting to extend economy-crushing lockdowns should not exist, but it very clearly does. That's my big moment of what the heck is going on here today. Now, I'm not new to this. I've known this was happening for a while. But I think this is one of those truths, one of those observations that while it's obvious, it's also unspoken. And in fact, there are many people who do not want it to be spoken of at all and will try to refute it, will say that it's not true. Why should there be any correlation? This is a massively complicated, enormously consequential decision at the national and state and local level about how quickly to reopen. But if you hate Trump, there's about a 95% chance, as of whether you're a politician, a journalist, a journo, there's about a 95% chance from what I'm seeing that you want the lockdowns to keep going. And the question that they won't answer for us right now is for one thing, we were told that this was to flatten the curve. As I've been saying to you, that has happened, although it's not clear that the social distancing that we've engaged in has really been the reason for it. If you look at the curves in various countries from extreme lockdown, now there's a difference of degree, but I'm talking about the trajectory. The trajectory in various countries seems to be quite similar, irrespective of the degree of lockdown. You have a rise and fall after a period of about 4 or 5 weeks. And you have a steep rise to the peak of the disease, and then it starts to fall off, although it's not falling off as quickly as many had said it would or believed that it would. That brings me to, for example, Dr. Scott Gottlieb, who has been making the rounds these days, who had this Pathway for Reopening America project, right? We had that. I walked you through it here on the show. He was on CBS News, Face the Nation, and he said that the concerning thing here is that we're looking at the prospect that this may be a persistent spread. 20,000 to 30,000 new reported cases per day despite intense lockdown orders in most states. While mitigation didn't fail, I think it's fair to say it didn't work as well as we expected. If this wasn't good enough, a national lockdown policy where we have businesses not able to operate, trillions and trillions of dollars of expense, all the social and psychological baggage and damage that has been self-imposed on us as a society, although really put on us by the elected political class, the work from home, still well-paid journo media, and our public intellectual, public scientist class, right? Public policy scientist class. They're the ones that said we had to do this. And now we're looking at it and they're telling us, well, we might just kind of have to keep doing this for the foreseeable. If this has not stopped, let's take this down to its most basic elements. I know that there are smarmy imbeciles who can't think for themselves. Most of them are Democrats that you'll see on this issue, but there are Republicans too. If you are a conservative who hates Trump, you also think that lockdowns should be extended. Isn't that interesting? It's almost like this issue, which we have run the experiment. For people who hate Trump, is everything about him? The answer is yes. As long as he's president, nothing else can matter to them, really. Not mass death, not the destruction of the economy. Those things can matter, but not as much as Trump. Trump is the single most important issue to them. It's the thing that it's the thing around which they fix everything else. He is their psychological North Star. He is their sun and their moon. I mean, it's maddening because we're supposed to be able to have a more adult conversation here about what we should be doing as a country, but that's not what's happening. This is increasingly falling into just the most rank partisanship, the most completely intellectually dishonest approach from the left about what they really want here. But let's take a step back for a moment. Let's boil it, because I know that the libs like to say, you're not a public policy. Well, actually, I'm a public policy expert in some ways. But you're not an epidemiologist, and you're not a public health specialist. And, okay. Right. Fine. Those people, and this is where we get into this fantastic editorial from Victor Davis Hanson, one of the strongest living editorial columnists out there right now. One of the strongest current members of that class, looking at the experience that we have had of expertise versus experience. What have we seen in the last few months? What do they really know? And the report card for the people that want to wag a finger at you and say, excuse me, prole, hey, hoi polloi, back indoors, shut your mouth. We're the smart people. We know what to do. They are wrong and wrong and wrong again. We're not supposed to pay any attention to that. How does this spread? How deadly is this? How do we stop it? How do we cure it? How do we treat it? How long until a vaccine? Should you wear a mask? They haven't even figured out yet, and this is what we're seeing in New York State. We're told to do the social distancing and listen to them. They can't protect nursing homes. I mean, this is where most of the fatalities, there are states where over half of all fatalities are in assisted living facilities. And this has been true in Europe as well. They can't figure out how to protect self-contained, enclosed environments full of particularly vulnerable individuals. But then they want to tell us how all the rest of us should go about this? What Gottlieb was saying there, and remember, everybody now, they're all so smug when challenged, but don't let that slow you down in this. Ask the questions that you need to ask. He's saying that we may have continual spread. That's another way of saying that people are going to keep dying from this disease. They're going to keep spreading. They're going to keep getting the disease, and then some percentage will keep dying from the disease no matter what we do. So looking at this, and we were initially told to get into this posture of lockdown across the board, across the country, to make sure that our hospital capacity was not overwhelmed. We are not in danger of that, not even close. And in fact, if we were in danger of that, even in New York, why are we shutting down a hospital in Central Park? Oh, because it was religious. And so the members of the progressive community decided that it was unacceptable that a Christian group would operate a park to minister to the sick and try to help them from dying, prevent them from dying in Central Park. And we had a hospital ship that's floated away now. I mean, I guess it's sailed away. It hasn't floated. That would be bad. And we have the Javits Convention Center shutting down, which was an over 1,000-bed facility the federal government created here for COVID patients. So we're nowhere near overwhelming our hospital capacity. And in fact, the danger to hospitals across the country has been from lack of patients, lack of funding, lack of actual health care going on. That's what has been really the challenge for in 90% of the country. That's been the problem with hospitals, that they've been told you're not allowed to be a hospital right now because we all have to get ready for COVID-19. And the death toll from this, it'll be a lagging indicator. How many people die from cancer that would have been detected? How many people missed that cancer screening? How many people didn't start chemo early enough? Whatever it may be, didn't get an early intervention for a heart condition. So people are going to die because of the lockdowns too. That's now beyond any doubt. But they have transitioned us. They have transitioned us from just a little bit until we can get ready to, no, we're pretty much going to keep doing this, forever. We just got word today, a report based out of a scientist from Los Alamos. We got word today that they think, or that they've proven, according to the scientists, that there's a mutation already of a much more contagious strain of COVID-19, much more contagious strain out there, and that it might have mutated in Europe. And the reason the West Coast wasn't hit so badly was that the original Chinese strain, the mortality rate from these, they believe, is the same. So that you have to read all the way down to the bottom of the piece. The mortality rate's the same, but the spread of it is much more rapid. And the fact that it has mutated might mean that you have limited immunity even if you get it. But okay, so what point? The media loves to rush out there with these stories. They're effectively, hey, everybody, we're all completely out of luck. So you might as well just keep hiding under your bed and hope that our scientists come through with this. The same scientific community that hasn't cured the common cold is going to cure COVID-19. Maybe. I mean, I hope so. That would be amazing. It'd be a miracle. But I wouldn't hold your breath. I wouldn't want to wait on that one. But we have had lockdown, and yet the virus, we are seeing more cases, fewer, but still cases. How is this virus being spread if the lockdown measures are sufficient to prevent this virus from getting to people that would get it anyway? I mean, effectively, are we just making, if the virus was going to spread, so we'll just use easy numbers here, to 100 people, if that's the real epidemiological reach of this thing, right, that's going to get to 100 people, are we just making sure that it takes 3 months instead of 2 to infect 100 people? Because the public health benefit of that is certainly questionable. You might argue there's really no public health benefit of slow, unless it's overwhelming your ability to care for people, but we've already shown that's not the case. They have completely shifted the strategy. And you have people that are saying, no, we cannot reopen. People will die. I'm saying this again. People will die. That's right. People have been dying and people will die. And it's terrible and it's tragic. And it could happen to any one of us. It could happen to you. It could happen to me. But that has, in fact, always been true. We are all at risk from death. The risk for a vast majority of Americans, of human beings right now from this virus is manageable. It's not zero. It's not negligible. It's manageable. We need to learn to manage this as a society, and part of that means going forward with our lives. What is the alternative? Where's the timeline that's suggested? Just keep dragging this out. Oh, we see a little spike in cases. Got to do a lockdown again. Let's flatten our economy after we flattened the curve. We've had spike in cases. Got to shut everything down again. People are still getting the virus, going to keep getting the virus. This policy, look, Trump knew that this was not the move. He the 15 days to slow the spread was for hospital capacity, and then beyond that, it was just pressure. They just brought all this pressure, and it was fine. They finally, and I've been worried about this, and I didn't want to say this, they finally got Trump to go against his instincts and bend the knee on this one, and he extended it 30 days beyond the 15 days. As I've said, the 15 days always made enough sense to me, and I still think you can justify the 15 days to get the word out. You know, it would be like taking a day or two before a hurricane, batten down the hatches, right? It was just an extended version of that. But what we're seeing now isn't prepare for the coming storm. What we're seeing is a transformation, a slow but sure transformation of society, the destruction of our economy, and the progressives seeing this as an opportunity to remake the state in their image. No, this cannot stand. This cannot be allowed to continue. The bad faith arguments about how you just want Granny to die if you think that businesses should reopen. The science is not on the side of the people that have claimed lockdowns are the only answer. It wasn't even that there was a discussion. We couldn't even have a talk about this. It had to be lockdowns, they said. And now it has to be a series of lockdowns. Now we're talking about a second wave, mutations of the virus. Are we just going to hide forever? Or are we going to allow people to be the arbiters of their own risk, to get out there and to live life? How many of you have told that you could, you had a 1 in, and the real number is more like 1 in 10,000 based on the data out of California. But if you had a 1 in 10,000 chance of dying from something, if you get the disease, or you can, that's something you're going to take on as a risk, but you get to live your life for the next 2 or 3 years. Or you could have a 1 in a million chance, maybe, or 1 in 100,000 chance of dying from this, but you have to stay locked down in your home and watch the American society, economy, and way of life crumble, and watch people completely lose their minds. We know the answer. This slow drag through is not sufficient. Open up businesses. What New York is doing is wrong. What other states that are dragging their feet on this are doing is wrong. The data, I don't care about what the so-called experts say. We can all see the numbers. The data does not support what they are saying. And people who claim that we can get to a zero risk future with this don't know what they're talking about. And increasingly, it just seems like psychotic anti-Trumpism. Once again, I don't know what else to say. That's what it looks like. Team, I just want to put out a reminder request that you let us know how things are going in your part of the country and where you stand on this. And those of you that are affected, either workers or small business owners, I want to hear what you think. And it's lonely being a skeptic on this issue these days. I mean, there are some people who will say, open up in the public life as conservatives in the media, but they won't really attack the lies around all of this. There's a little bit of a hesitancy that I'm seeing from people to challenge the experts. If they're right, let's hear why they're right. Challenge them. Have them explain what the real purpose is here of the continued lockdown, or rather why we're going to move in phases. Remember, the phase can always switch back. So this feels more and more like a tactic of delay. They're not trying to get out of the lockdown. They're saying, okay, we'll go up, we'll go down. We'll go up, we'll go down. No, that is catastrophic for society and for businesses. We can handle this virus. We can't handle the imbeciles in charge making more stupid decisions.
As those numbers come down, what do you tell the people of your state who say, okay, I see the numbers coming down. We got to get back to business. I've got to reopen my shop. I've got to reopen my business. I've got to start to get back to life. What's your message to those people in your state?
Well, my message is health has to come first. And if we're not extra careful about health, the economy will not improve. If that's another reason testing is so important. If people are afraid, you can give money to the store owners and say, open up. But if no one's going to go out on the streets and they don't have customers, what good is it going to be? So we have to be careful. You have to err on the side of science and of caution. That doesn't mean you shut down everything all the time. I think New York has issued a very careful plan. But when the president importunes 1,000 protesters, a fringe group, it seems, most of them, to go protest and say, open the government regardless of scientific information, that's going to hurt all of us.
I'm going into stores already. Going to stores pretty much every other day, I'd say. I go do shopping for food, for sundries, for things that I need for just basic life-sustaining activities here. Paper towel, toilet paper. I'm going into stores right now. Why would I not go into stores if there were more that were open? If there were more restaurants that were open, I'd go into them too. I have a feeling I'm not alone. And I'm in New York, in the middle of New York. If you look at the heat map for where you have the greatest concentration of COVID-19 cases, in fact, I live right on the edge of one of, they do it by zip code usually. I live right on the edge of one of the zip codes that had, in Manhattan, one of the 5 boroughs, the most COVID cases by far. So I'm right here. I'm going into stores. But you notice how we keep seeing this change now. Right now, it's if you want to reopen the economy, you can't even reopen the economy because the economy is dependent upon people going out and they won't go out. What evidence do they have for this? Is that really true? You know what would make people feel more confident in going and starting to live more of their lives? If they saw other people able to live more of their lives and we're not all going to drop dead. It's not all going to be the end of the world. There are risks. I'm not saying there aren't risks, but I would be out there. And I just talked to a friend last night who said that he has COVID or has had COVID rather, and said it's nasty and it can be really tough. But there are a lot of diseases out there that if you're otherwise healthy can still knock you on your butt for a week. Most notably the flu, which we just deal with year in and year out and kills tens of thousands of people. And we never shut down businesses, and we never have the government telling us that we have to wear masks in public and all this other stuff. But the explanation changes every day, right? It was flatten the curve for healthcare and hospital worker capacity, and now it's just give us a little more time as we figure out testing and tracing. And now people are looking at testing and tracing like me, and I'll talk more about tracing later on. And sure enough, there's no way we're going to get anywhere near the testing and tracing capacity that we're told in places like New York, and I'm sure in California too, although I have to see what their numbers are, is necessary for a reopen. And so now they're saying, oh, well, even if we did open now, okay, maybe the test and trace is a little bit pie in the sky with the numbers that we demand for a reopen. But if test and trace isn't, we're going to move past that. And now we're told that even if we opened up, nobody would go. Or even if we open up until we have the testing and tracing, no one's going to go outside. It's just not true. It's not representative of millions and millions of people across the country who would absolutely be willing to take precautions, sure, but take the day-to-day risks into their own hands of going out and living their lives. I want my life back. I don't want Governor Cuomo to be in charge of how I can live my life. But this is the problem we're seeing. I was warning about this, and even some people I know very well were saying, in the early stages, I had people reach out to me, listen to this show. They said, in the early stages, I thought maybe you were being a little bit of worrying too much on government overreach. Yeah? How's that looking right now? And some have come back and said, you know what, you were right. The people, especially of the statist and liberal and left-wing mentality, love having additional power, want to wield that additional power, and don't want to give it up. And you'll see this with the way they justify their policies now. Do what I say, or you're killing people. Well, that's not really true. Right? That's actually not accurate. And at any point in time, you could go out there and you could have a cold that you don't know about, and you could cough, near or touch or however you transmit it to a senior citizen, and that person could die, could get pneumonia and could die from that cold. Now, I know COVID-19 is worse than a normal cold, but I'm just saying there are risks that we all have to deal with in our day-to-day lives. And a government that is promising you no risk is like a government that is promising you total security. It's lying to you. They're lying to you, and they don't really care about you. Here is, for example, the governor of New York telling us here why you have to wear masks or else you're killing people. Play clip 13.
And by the way, you don't wear a mask for yourself. You wear a mask to protect me. I wear a mask to protect you. We owe each other a certain amount of reasonableness and respect in society. Do I think local government should be enforcing it? And should there be sanctions? Yes. Yes, because it is a public health emergency. You know, this is not just do me a favor. This is a public health emergency. And it's a statewide order that I put in place that I'm proud of. And local governments have the responsibility to enforce it. And part of their right, their legal right, is they can have a penalty or a sanction that they impose. You could literally kill someone because you didn't want to wear a mask. I mean, how cruel and irresponsible would that be?
When is that ever not going to be the case? When is that not going to be the case? When we go outside, we're going to wear masks forever? Because that seems to be what he's suggesting. We're not going to cure influenza anytime soon. So now is the new standard. If I don't wear a mask, I feel healthy, I have no symptoms, but I could cough on somebody. They'll never be able to prove. This is why the whole tracing thing also is really nonsense. And I said I would talk to you more about that. But how can you ever get past this standard? Wear a mask or you might be killing someone. The disease is out there and it's going to keep being out there. So we're all going to wear masks forever? This is stupid. I say no. I say no. Out in public, the science does not even support wearing masks, but we ignore that science now. Out in public, the risk of transmission is very, very low. And just as we've talked about, getting in, and they say, oh, don't compare it to cars. Oh, don't compare it. Every time you get in a car, there's a possibility you may die. Every time. Every time you leave your home, something could happen. Someone living, a few blocks away from me, was hit by falling debris before this whole pandemic thing happened from a building. They had to shut down blocks and blocks, and someone was killed just walking down the street. You going to never leave your apartment again? And you'd say, well, that's ridiculous because the risk is so low. Okay, if you're 25 years old, what is the risk that you will get COVID-19 and be hospitalized and die? It is infinitesimal. It's not zero, but it's infinitesimal. It's very small. If you're 35 years old, it's very small. If you're 45 years old, it's small, but it's getting a little higher, and so on and so forth. You go up every 10 years or so, and the risk ratio changes a little bit. And instead of focusing on the most vulnerable, we've been in lockdown for 6 weeks, and still more and more cases in the nursing homes here in New York in particular. How is that possible? No one's allowed to visit. We're on lockdown. The incubation period for the virus, they think, is 2 weeks. So how are you having more and more cases inside the nursing homes if social distancing and lockdowns work? Maybe what you're finding out is that even trying to protect more vulnerable populations is a challenge, and that the precautions that we're told to take all the time are deeply insufficient and always will be. But we can't even have this discussion right now. And there are a couple of reasons for it that have nothing to do with the virus. One is the mentality of the left, the liberals who want to control other people. And then you also have the anti-Trumpism that has become increasingly central. This is now a point of ideological identification. Are you pro or anti-lockdown? If you are pro-lockdown or cyclical lockdowns, continued lockdowns, you tend to be anti-Trump. If you are a supporter of the Trump administration, you want the country to start going back to normal life. And I would just say, which side is really on the side of science and being more realistic about the world? It's definitely not the lockdown people who have been telling us all along that we can't keep locking down forever. Well, if we can't keep locking down forever, why should we lock down for another month? What's the point? What's the point? In the hopes we're gonna lock down, we're gonna take on all that damage so we can hope for the miracle of a cure in the next month, of a therapeutic that knocks this thing out and we don't have to worry about it anymore. That's not a smart bargain, and we all know it. So absent that, what is the reason for the lockdown? They won't tell you. They'll just say, you must want people to die. Stay safe, stay inside, hide under your bed. I don't want to hide under my bed anymore.
Well, I was hoping they would spend more time on the crisis instead of those daily shows that the president put on. But the fact is that we need to allocate resources for this. In order to do that, any appropriations bill must begin in the House, and we have to have the information to act upon. So the fact that they said we're too busy being on TV to come to the Capitol is, well, business as usual for them. But it is not business that will be helpful to addressing this.
Yeah, I'm always wondering, too, and I'm sure you have this moment. What is Nancy Pelosi, what does she think she's saying? What? It's like, I know there are words, but it really just all goes through like gibberish. What is she talking about? They won't give the data for something. You know, she always has some BS objection, and the media covers for her. And we're supposed to pretend that she's a master legislator. She has some incredible skill set. She's just cunning and ruthless and will do whatever it takes to achieve power. That was true of Pablo Escobar, too. I don't think he was a business genius, believe it or not. I know people like to think these things. I remember being told by a career law enforcement officer a long time ago, you know, people like to think that the guys who work in organized crime, because you watch all these movies, you watch all these shows, and there's always the criminal mastermind. But when they've done some studies of these guys when they're in prison, they do some psychological and even some basic IQ testing. It turns out that, it's usually not a smart move to have to wonder if you're going to wake up on any given day, get shot or arrested. People find better ways. Really intelligent people usually find better ways to become wealthy, influential, and etc. But we're always, the criminal mastermind. No, it's just if you're ruthless, you can get away with a lot. If you don't care, then this is what I think it describes a lot of Democrat politicians, quite honestly. It's just do whatever they've got to do. It describes Joe Biden. The guy's an imbecile. He's not very smart. Never has been, never will be. We all know it. He just gives a speech and has been doing the politics thing for a long time. And, you know, he kind of yells and he looks like a politician. And guy's an imbecile. But I wanted to just circle back for a moment to what I've been telling you about for now many weeks, which is that we are approaching a test case here of what happens to this country when we are in the midst of what you would call a transformation into a benevolent totalitarianism. Now, I'm not sure it's benevolent, but that's what they're going to say. That's how it's being positioned. This is why you have Cuomo saying, if you're a nice person, wear a mask, and we're going to make everyone wear masks on pain of fine and even imprisonment, or else. How long are we going to wear masks? These masks are horrible. They're annoying. They're hard to breathe in. They make your face sweat. This is stupid. The science does not support wearing masks outside in open air, but we're all told we have to do this now because everyone's freaked out. Man, it's a good thing. It's a good thing this country right now, is not facing a major armed conflict. Because if we had to call up, we've gotten used to relying on a warrior class in this country. It's about 1% to 2% of Americans who, of their own volition, based on their own courage and desire to serve this country, have been fighting our wars for as long as I've been alive. You can imagine that there are a lot of people out there who, a lot of the left-wing snowflake types in particular, no interest in risk or dealing with icky, scary things. We're being lied to as a society that there's a way that the government is going to protect us from all this risk. The government has been a catastrophic failure across the board in responding to this. Now, I don't think that it really even matters whether you had a Democrat or Republican president because of the threat we were facing and what we've been up against. I think Trump has, in general, made better decisions than you would have had with a Democrat in that same spot. But it was really the CDC and state governments and the media and the whole apparatus all together and the World Health Organization and these different international bodies that look at, pandemic disease and the various modeling institutes for pandemic disease. They all just insisted that we go down this path, and what exactly have they done that's helpful? What genius plan do they come up with? Wash your hands and stay inside for months? That's the best we've got? How does it spread? How do we cure it? How do we stop it? When will this be done? They don't have any of those answers. And yet, there's always this appeal to authority from the left, in particular. There are Republicans too. This isn't a along neat ideological partisan lines issue, but there's an overall correlation, and we're just not willing as a society, it seems, to. I keep calling it an adult conversation, but look at things for what they are and understand we have to move forward. We have to take responsible risks into account.